Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child in Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child in Life. Today, I'm super excited to have Jillian, who is an Army spouse. So, Jillian, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell us what it's like being a military spouse.
Well, again, I just told a friend this week, it probably is not a good week to be asking me that question. But it's an emotional whiplash of good days and bad days, mostly. So it's very challenging to be a military spouse. But mostly having the components of being a parent into that. And depending on what your spouse does, having them gone all the time and then home for 2 weeks and then gone for a long period of time, then home and back and forth. It's like this hard life of no routine ever. So your kids are, one day screaming for dad when he walks out the door because they have no idea when he's coming back.
Yeah.
So life as a military spouse is amazing because you meet a diversity of friends and people and you grow, like your world is like huge compared to where you grew up or something,
Right.
So having the luxury or being forced into the luxury of like meeting people.
You don't have a choice.
You're right. You don't have a choice in like any matter at all, but it can be beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is definitely those good days, those bad days. Right. And that's what makes the lifestyle. Like, nobody wants to go through those bad days. Nobody wants to see, their kids screaming at the door because they don't know where their dad's going. When is their dad's coming back? Like, any of that. But it's, we're looking forward to those days where dad comes home or looking forward. And I will say, I was one of those like screaming, crying kids, even as a 9-year-old. I'm like, where is my dad going? And I knew where he was going. I knew how long he would be there. Approximately when he was coming back because you never really know exactly when. But it's still those things, especially with young kids, they don't have the brain power to understand that. And they don't have the power to understand why. It's like, we're not in an active war. I grew up in an active war. We'd have to go and fight. And now it's like, okay, we're not in an active war. Like, why are we still, why are deployments still happening? Why are these long, long stints where a loved one is gone still happening? But there's still always a mission. And kids don't understand that, especially so young, because they don't even understand the concept of a week versus a month.
Exactly. Like my kids are 3 and 1. Mm-hmm. So the 3-year-old's just barely starting to know, like, oh, today's Friday. I get to go, to the store with mom and then to story time. That's her Friday. But like to say, oh, a week from now, daddy's coming home. No idea what that is. Like, that could be a year from now, like an hour from now. Although she is like, she's maturing to where she's like, is daddy coming home today? Like, is it today, mom? Soon. So she's starting to learn the timeline a little bit more. The 1-year-old screams, like he just doesn't know, and he'll slam on the door, with his hands, like dad, and so they don't understand. I think that's probably the hardest. Well, no, I can't say the hardest. It's
one
hard,
of them.
It's hard emotionally as a mom, knowing that like, oh, they didn't have a choice in the matter. Like we decided to have kids, not really thinking about that part of it for them.
Right.
And now we like brought them into this scenario and everyone says, oh, your kids are so resilient. They'll be fine. But I'm like, yeah, they'll be fine, but like, what issues are they going to have when they're older?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
is it separation anxiety? Is it like this, daddy issue? Are they going to have a daddy issue? Are they going to have a mom issue now because just mom's screaming at them all day long for
Right.
days and days and days? So,
Yeah.
it's kind of
I will
scary.
say, yes, it's like resilient and everything. And, we just are. I think military families, whether that be kids, spouse, service member, we're just resilient as a whole. But then also it's like you grow up and then once you kind of, like we said, like you don't understand the process as, a 1 or 3-year-old, but then once you grow up and once you understand and you can look back and say, oh no, like those were cool things that I got to do. It sucks that my mom or dad was gone, but you look back and it's like, no, like that was pretty cool of what I did or cool of what my parent did. And it's a weird thing because I hated it in the moment. Like I hated moving. I hated it. I would scream and cry and everything. Like I hated moving. I hated my dad being gone. But now I look back and it's like, okay, no, cool. Like because we moved, because my dad was gone, it's a domino effect. You get to do these cool things, have these cool opportunities. It's like give and take, so giving up your dad being gone. But okay, I got to, hang out with my friends a little bit more or meet some new people. Or I always loved, because we were a reserve family, I always loved going to the unit and hanging out at the unit. So I got to do that more. Or at least it felt like I got to do it more. I don't know if I did or not, but so it is give and take. And it's not always a fun lifestyle when you're living it. But then you look back and it's like, oh no, I got to do some cool things. I got to meet some cool people. I got to, it's life experiences and it builds character. It gives resiliency, but, that's not always the word everyone wants to hear either.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think it's different being the mom. So yes. I like hearing your perspective. Like I'm hoping my daughter, who's my 3-year-old, she'll grow up and appreciate the experiences. Yeah. But I tell my husband all the time, like, it's traumatic for me as the mom. Like I will always have the memories of watching them stand at the door and screaming for you. And then I have to pick up the pieces and, emotionally be there for them, but emotionally be there for myself. And like, how are we not going to have meltdowns every day or, take care of them while like I'm like just losing it. Yeah. So, but I am not a military child either. So it's like we all have these different experiences. Right. And maybe a mom who grew up in the military will like approach it differently with their kids too, where it's like, you're going to be fine. Okay. You're fine. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think it's so different for everyone because you don't know how a 1-year-old is going to react. You don't know how a 3-year-old is going to react. Some kids are really okay with their parent being gone. They're like, oh yeah, see you later. Like, and that's still painful. I've heard as a parent to say, oh, well, they don't, they're not crying because I'm leaving. They're not, they don't love me, kind of that end of it. And so, I've heard that, but it's like, it's hard to see that, it's hard to see your kids going through that. And I don't have kids and I'm sure I'll experience it, when my kids are around and, I have to leave. But it's hard. It's hard to be a parent to a military kid because you don't know how they're going to react. You don't know how they're going to take a certain situation. And it's really training. The military, forces them to, train their minds to say, oh no, like this is going to be okay. But it comes with time. It's not something that happens overnight, especially when they're so young. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it pushes the mom to hopefully, build that community wherever you are, which I think is like one of the most important things for a military spouse. And is to create that village that you really don't have anywhere you go. Yeah. I mean, it's just new ground every time. and depending on how often you move, like we've moved 4 times in the last 4 years. So it's just like you're tilling new ground. It's like constant new friends, not only for myself, but like, okay, does my 3-year-old have friends around? And, you know, I have to get out of the house and make friends for her. You know, I can't just,
Right.
oh, let's just stay in our house. Let me paint my whole life away and you guys just have a friend. So like I have to go to story times. I have to go, you know, to swimming in the ocean or, I mean, we're in Savannah, Georgia. So we have the ocean here, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I think it's like the biggest lacking thing maybe for a spouse is that community and a hometownness maybe, or the friends or people you trust. Because again, you can meet someone at story time and they're like, oh yeah, I have a great babysitter for you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know your babysitter and I'm not hiring her because like she's not coming in my house until I probably know her for a year, you know?
Right.
So we have like this lack of help, lack of the village, you know, the village help kind of thing. So, and the older I get now, the more I'm like, I really wish we were near parents for some help. Because it's just like 24/7, your kids with you and your husband. And so there's just no break. There's no like date time. There's no going to events or whatever, which is fine. You know, we chose to have children and this is the point we're at, you know, with the little babies.
You make it work. However,
yeah, you make it work.
That is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do whatever you have to do for your kids, and that's more a priority than, you know, oh, I wanted to go out this night to do something, or I don't know. I don't even go out. What am I talking about? Yeah, what am I talking about? Our nights are like
that's key. Is that community factor?
I think it is. Yeah, and I think it's really hard, probably in like maybe my generation. I'm a millennial, so I'm a little bit like a little older, maybe a little tad bit older. But like the younger moms are just so, I'm noticing like it's really hard for them to make conversation or like get past that initial like introduction part. Right. And so there's constantly posts on like Facebook groups and stuff like, oh, I have no friends, you know, over and over and over. You see that like over and over. It's like really heartbreaking because, you know, it's like they're so lonely in the house. They know nobody in a new city. But there are other spouses that would totally open up their house and be like, yeah, come over.
Oh, but for sure.
If the younger spouse isn't willing to like put in that effort, you're just going to stay without a community. So it's like, it's that painful growing pains of like, you have to practice conversation, practice asking questions, get to know the other person, and like, don't make it so about you in order to really like open up a way to have it be a back and forth kind of thing. Right. That's just my perspective on it.
Right. Yeah. It's literally just practicing saying hello. Like, you know, and for some people, and it's going to be interesting seeing how it happens, especially with this next generation coming up of, phones. That's it.
What a boomer. I'm a boomer doing this. I don't even know if people text like that. Like
we're so, you know, glued to technology. And that's great. And technology advances are incredible and are going to, you know, make a huge difference. But, you know, you're not used to necessarily going out of your house and going to the local playground and saying hello. Or, you know, kids nowadays are literally on a, you know, Switch or tablet or something, you know, 24/7. And, you know, everyone parents differently. And, you know, my kids will probably have some form of electronic devices at that age too. But, you know, you have to still, social skills are key. And if you don't have those social skills, then, you know, a life that is like the military that is already challenging is going to be more challenging. Because we were forced, you know, growing up, it was, okay, you're in a new school. You have to say hello to somebody or you're going to be, you know, alone at the lunch table.
Lonely.
Yeah. And most of the time, you know, the other kids around were good about it because they knew exactly what you were going through. They knew you were the new kid. And so they would kind of, approach you to make you feel welcome, which was great. Those, seasoned military kids, seasoned spouses.
Right.
So like military kids making you feel welcome.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, well, if you're not willing to put in that effort to go somewhere, to go to an event, to do whatever that is, you miss out on the community, which, it is one of the best parts of the military life that we have.
Oh yeah. You can get so tight knit.
Yes.
And then you leave, which is horrible.
Right. But then it's so crazy that those relationships that you did form, 10 years ago, even when I left my last, when we were in Texas, when we left Texas and my dad retired, those friends that I made there, I didn't talk to for like 8 to 10 years plus. And, all you have to do is pick up the phone. Again, it says just saying hi. And then it's like, that time frame never went by. And those people who were there for you 10 years ago are still there for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you get, that tight knit community that is just always there. Yeah.
It's important. The Facebooking and Instagram won't take away like physical need to be around people. It just.
Yeah. Your neighbors.
You can't argue it. Yeah. You can't argue it. Yeah. Yeah. What I was going to say, but I have friends from every location you go to, you move from, you're saying bye for a long time, but like you're not really saying bye. Well, thankfully with technology, you don't have to like leave them for good. But I'm excited to see, in 5-10 years, are my kids going to hang out with them at some point? Are we going to meet up at different locations and end up being on the same base and stuff? So, you never know. You could be back, stationed with that same, person, that same family. Right. Yeah. So it's all about, let's get rid of the RBF. Right?
Yes.
And put a smile on, get to story time, meet someone new. It's important. So, and we always say like it takes a good year to feel like you've made a friend. I mean, a full year of feeling lonely before you've made some sort of community. And I mean, that's our own experience. So, people might be different, different timeline, but so a full year of feeling miserable, which we do every time. And then we meet our super amazing group of friends and then we move. So it's like, it's pretty awful.
And you start the cycle all over again.
Yeah. But I always tell myself like, because I'm always like, how am I going to like get any better than what I've had friend wise? But you never know. Like you can get the same level, if not more, not to make the other friends feel lesser, but it's like you have to live where you are now. You can't be on your phone texting your friends back there because you're not going to be making the whole community thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, that's the biggest part of it. And, you know, you might not have it everywhere you go. You might not feel like you have it, especially because parents or loved ones or, your childhood friends aren't there, but you have to make it. And if you don't, put in that effort to make it, then you're going to be more miserable. And I hate to say it that way, but it's so true.
Yeah. It takes work and it's very painful, but it is worth it. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm talking like I am a seasoned spouse. I'm really not. Probably age puts me there, but not like time in. So,
but you've learned a lot moving 4 times in 4 years. So you're forced to learn the cycle quickly.
No, yeah, I know, because we got married. So my husband was actually a trumpet player before being a pilot. So he was so he would do like taps and stuff for funerals and events. So we met, and that was his MOS, I guess is the proper term for that. And we were married, and then he was deployed as the only musician in Afghanistan at that specific time. So he was playing like fallen soldiers over there and, graduation ceremony, whatever they do over there. I don't know. I don't really know. In Afghanistan. So he got to fly. Whatever they do. He got to fly on the Black Hawk for the first time in his career over in Afghanistan. And he came back and was like, I want to do this. And me, I don't know what, I'm like, yeah, sure, go for it. No big deal. No sweat off my back.
Right.
We just had our first child. We were in Hawaii, owned a house. And then we were supposed to be there 4 years. And after a year and a half, we moved to Alabama, which is Fort Rucker, Fort Novosel now.
Mm-hmm.
So the home of aviation, the helicopter training, he started that. And so that's like 6 weeks of one training. Then you go into another one, like SEER training, I guess. I don't know if you're familiar with SEER training. Yeah. All of this was new to me. Oh, I don't know. I know nothing. I just spit out what he tells me. So that's all I know.
Right.
So he trained on the helicopter and then ended up flying the C-12 aircraft, which is like the Army intelligence. We didn't even know they had a little airplane thing. Yeah. But the Army has a little airplane.
Far in between, but
yeah, they are. So ended up flying the C-12 in flight school when we had our second baby, right after he finished Common Core. So like the day after or something. I don't even know. It was ridiculous. Right after. Ridiculous. Like, why? Yeah. So then from there, flight school, we put in for Germany and Savannah, Georgia. I think Savannah was our number one. So we ended up coming here, flying the C-12, and now they're cutting C-12 pilots. I don't know if you're aware of that going on. Like a bunch of nonsense going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they're cutting C-12 pilots, and guess what? We're part of that cut now. It's happening from year classes. They're like breaking it down from year classes or whatever. So all the way back to 2019, pilots are getting cut and sent back to Fort Novosel to now fly on helicopters. So, it's just like this whiplash thing. I feel like my whole life as a military spouse is just, go for it. Oh, whoops. Just whiplash me over here.
Change your life.
Yeah. So he's going back to Alabama and I'll be staying in Georgia.
Wow.
So same parenting again, which is, my favorite thing in the entire world.
Said no one
Hence
ever.
the daycare starting this week. Okay.
Yes.
It was I can't do it anymore.
You needed it.
Yeah. Well, because I also have my business, which is oil painting. So
tell us about that too.
Yeah. So I'm a professional oil painter and I paint aviation and military machinery. And I started it also when my husband started flight school. So our household goods weren't back from Hawaii yet. So I bought a palette knife to start painting. And I was like, I'll do something nice for him. I'll paint the Apache. It was just kind of a random pick. And it just kind of happened. I painted it the way I could with a palette knife. It's very different than brushes. And I've been painting for 10 years, fine art with paint brushes and oil paints. And there's this system you go about painting, a formal fine art piece. And so I approached it very differently with a palette knife. But then I was like, oh, that actually worked. Let me try this again. So I did a few more and then it rolled into this small little business because people were loving them. And then I started showing them at the PX for a bit.
Oh, that's so cool.
Just having a little booth there and people would, at graduation times or just going to lunch because that's where, Starbucks is. So people.
It draws a crowd.
Exactly. So there's not much at Fort Novosel, but Starbucks is there. So yeah. So so now that launched into a full art career for me. So now I paint for internationally aviation for German Air Force, Italian Air Force, French Air Force. I've had requests coming in from crazy countries. I'm I'm not sure I can ship to you. But it's finding
I've never heard of this country before.
Where are you? What's your zip code? I'm not sure. So it was a hobby that developed into a full-time business for me. And that's the other thing I think spouses need a hobby, just mental sanity and something for yourself. whatever that looks like. I don't really know. Anyways, so yeah, it's a full business for me, and it's
I
just
love
like
that.
picking up, going crazy on Instagram. I'm trying to keep up with people and trying to like be professional as I'm like recording with like my greasy hair and sweatpants, and like my kids are like screaming, and I'm just in my little corner like, let me just paint one more.
Right.
So yeah, so that's my business.
I love that. That is
Yeah.
so cool. And like, you know, I totally agree with the hobby thing. Like, I did not, that was my big goal for this year. I was like, I need to find a hobby, because if you don't find a hobby, then, you have nothing.
Yeah.
You're not, I don't know. It was just not fun times. And so,
Yeah.
I picked up clay. And so I've loved, it's a way to express yourself, through art. And, not necessarily that you're expressing yourself as a plane, but it's,
Right.
it's a way to like, you're able to get into a different zone in your mind that you never necessarily knew
brain
existed.
switches to the left side.
Yes.
So all the anxiety and whatever anger, like whatever's going on, it like goes in the background, and you can just, But it is a way, like I paint the aircrafts, and I'm not military, but it is a way for me to like somehow create legacy for all these people who are either getting it for their loved ones or as a memoir for their grandfathers who served. And it's now for me like a global legacy that I'm able to like be a tiny itty bitty part of in a modern world with a piece of fine art for like everyone has the same universal love for their aviation.
Right.
So, or their aircraft, so it's been so fun to get to know like the whole clientele of, I'm talking to people from Russia, Taiwan, like Chile, Argentina, like, hey, this is my aircraft. Can you paint it? And I'm like, I want to, yes. Will customs let you have the painting? Because I'm not sure you're allowed to have it, but yeah. So yeah, it's like this my own beautiful world of aviation that's like kind of separate from politics, separate from military, and just solely like a legacy piece of art that they can have. So yeah, that's what it has turned into for me. And so I'm able to like put myself in their stories. Like I just did some for D-Day, and like you can't help but cry or read stories, and you're like, soldiers, no matter what country, were giving so much for their country. Like there was loss across the board. And to paint something like that is like, it's emotional. Or I had some for a couple of Gold Star families, and like one just lost her husband. So like, I can't even go on her Instagram page without crying. Like, it's horrible. And it could be any of our friends that we know, at any point now, you just know too many pilots, you know too much in this world. It's like their children don't have their dad anymore. Yeah. So like I'm able to be a small part of that with what I paint. And that makes my life a little more like mentally stable in this world of like no stability. So
yeah, you're making a difference. And that's like the biggest thing. And even with this, podcast, it's like you're making a difference. You feel like you're part of the community. Again, part of the community,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so it just gets you, I don't know, I think there's a different motivation that goes with it at that point too, that you're making a difference, globally. And you're able to say, hey, no, I made an impact in this little way that, again, maybe little to you, but is, huge to someone else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. For me, I need it, or like, I don't know how I would be surviving this lifestyle without, we could just call it the hobby, but I I'm so buried in commissions. I'm like,
it's more than a hobby.
Yeah, it's more than a hobby. Yeah. So, and it's not just aircraft. Like I do tanks and Bradleys and all things that I don't know what they are. I just get a picture. I'm like, what's it called again? Okay. Yeah. So I tell people like, I'm not like I don't know aviation world really. I just let them tell me their story. I'm like, I know the shapes and the curves and the colors and the depths. And I'm like, I'm the creator. And so sometimes I post things that like aren't accurate, and everyone has been so kind in that world. Like, I have the flight helmet,
yes.
account, Gentex. They like create all the helmets for like all of the helicopters in the US, I guess, or something like that. He's probably going to correct me later and be like, but like so kind. I've done a couple commissions for him for that account holder. And, you know, if I get some information wrong, everyone's so kind, and they're not like make me feel bad for not knowing exactly what things are called or whatever. And I'm always like, hey, I'm not the aviator.
Right.
I know paint and I know like shapes and colors, and just let me paint.
Yeah.
And they do. They're just like, you know, just letting you know next time, you know, it's called this. It's like, I think I called like the helmet a mask or something. And I was like, oh, that's okay. Not accurate. Okay.
You learn things as you go.
Exactly. So yeah. So everyone's been like so kind to me, even though I'm, you know, a little tiny female who knows nothing. And like my music choices are always critiqued by people like, really, you chose that song for this reel? I'm like, okay, I'm just like trying to paint and make a reel, and the reel is like so painful to make. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. No, it's just learning. And, you know, again, you know, this community is one of the most supportive, you know, I feel, might be a little biased on that, but I feel it's like one of the most supportive communities out there that, you know, we just want to see everyone succeed. So even if it's just, you know, in your world of painting of, okay, well, it's this, but you know, small little critiques like that, but it's done in such a kind way that it's not.
Yeah, it's everyone's been so kind. So, and now, you know, I told my husband, like, I'm an aviation nerd now. Like all my pages that I follow are just like the aviation. I'm just like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah. But
I love that.
Yeah. It's been fascinating, really. Yeah. And, you know, now I tell my husband, like, you know, I know more people than you do, like rank wise. I have a much larger, like, scale of go-to people. So
isn't that just fun, too?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, so I have this event in September. It's this big naval event thing in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, I'm going to that because of my work, not my husband. And I'm like, I feel so proud about it.
You should.
And not like an in-your-face thing, but like, I don't know, I've made something for myself. And I've done it with my hard work while he's gone, single parenting, you know. And he's so supportive. I mean, he does everything for me when he is home. So I make it sound like he's not really supportive, but he is. He watches all my reels before he posts. I'm like, did I show too much skin in that video? Like, I think you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, so. I absolutely love that. And, you know, you're building, you know, again, globally, but you're building something for yourself. You're able to say, I did this, you know, pretty much by myself.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work. Yeah. But I think spouses need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the last thing, which kind of transitions very well into that, but the last thing I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to another military spouse?
Don't do it. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
Think about the hard stuff.
I would say, since we've been saying the community is key to like not feel that loneliness or like, you know, be so ostracized from people, is get rid of the resting bitch face. Really.
Yeah,
and just put a smile on, and you have to make the conversation. Like,
yeah,
even if it goes nowhere. I mean, I've had people who just blatantly don't want to be friends with me, and I'm like, why? Like, is it because your husband's, a ranger or whatever? Did I say that? Like, I don't know why you don't want to be friends with me. And so there's some insecurity that could go into it, but it doesn't matter. Just keep moving on, meet new people. Like, there's, how many people to meet? There's just endless.
Right.
So it's just worth it. And it might be different if, you don't have kids or something. Like, you'll find different friends, different ways, obviously, than going to story time. The only way I make friends is to go to story time. So yeah, you have to just put in the effort, I think, and have a little confidence, even if people are, don't care to be friends.
Just say, okay, and move on.
So no resting bitch face.
Yes.
And have a hobby. I don't care what it is. Go crochet old lady blankets. Like, doesn't matter. Just do something with your hands. Let your brain switch. Because there's too much anxiety in this whole lifestyle. You need something.
No, absolutely. I love that. And where can people find your art? Not that you didn't just say you're like knee deep in commissions, but where can people find your art?
On Instagram. It's my name, like Jillian Phillips Art, or I have a website. It's all the same, JillianPhillipsArt.com.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
Well, but really, I just like hearing stories. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
And good luck with officer.
Yes, thank you.
I was gonna call it officer camp, but it's not camp. So. Yeah, officer school.
Candidacy school.
Okay.
You were close to the C.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GoAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's GRACIE @GOAMCL.org with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.